My name is Jane Chueh, and I'm a clinical professor at the Stanford Medical School, Medical Center. Clinically, I work as a high-risk obstetrician, which means we see high-risk pregnancies, and I also do fetal ultrasounds on pregnancies in general, looking for fetal anomalies. So every patient that we see, we do require that we know their blood type and RH type. And I know you've talked a lot about the ABO blood system. It's important because at delivery there's a chance that they may bleed, whether they have a vaginal delivery or whether they have a C-section. Sometimes they bleed, most of the time they bleed very minimally, and so they don't require transfusion, but occasionally, in rare cases, they have a lot of bleeding. And it becomes a very complicated case where they require lots of blood. If you need blood, then it's important to have the type of blood that the person receives matched to their type. So we want to know what that is. And in fact, we actually require that they be typed twice. So they're typed at a prenatal visit, and they're also typed when they come in before they receive blood. So there's two that
is that important?
That is important, because you can't just, it could be a mistake. I mean, if they have just one result. So the policy is that there's two that actually correlate, that they're the same. If you don't have a blood type, and you need blood, then the only option is, the blood bank gives you universal donor, which would be O negative. But O negative is not the most common type of blood there is, and you can't use up your entire pool of O negative blood. So the best thing would be to give the person the type of blood that they actually have. So in pregnancy particularly, the RH factor, which is a rhesus blood group on the red cell, is important. This refers to a group of antigens, the most common being the D antigen, and there's a D positive group and there's a D negative antigen. In other words, they're missing the D antigen. So everybody has two alleles, right? So they could be D positive, or D positive, D negative, or D negative, D negative.
So it's kind of like the O type, where O is nothing, whereas you have A, B, or nothing.
Correct, exactly. So just like with A blood type, you can have homozygous A, which would be A positive, or heterozygous A, which would be A plus O, right, or A O. And so this becomes an issue when we find an Rh negative woman who's D negative. So if she marries a partner who is not Rh negative, in other words, he's Rh positive, and he's either D plus, or D plus D negative, both of them which are considered, D or Rh positive, then there's a chance that her child could be Rh positive, either D plus, well actually would have to be 100% D plus D negative, right? Because one of the genes comes from her and it'll be D negative, and the other one is going to come from her partner. So we need to know what her partner's genotype is for the Rh antigen, and we need to know if the fetus has 100% chance of being Rh positive.
And so just to be clear here then, the risk here is that the mother would be Rh negative and the baby's Rh positive.
Correct.
And if the mother's and the baby's blood were to see each other, that the mother's blood might not recognize the Rh positive in the baby's blood and attack it or something?
No, basically if the mother's Rh negative and sees the Rh positive in the fetal blood, then it will recognize it as being foreign, because she's never seen the D antigen until she became pregnant.
So what are, besides the actual mother fetus interaction, are there any other important clinical settings related to this or otherwise where knowing blood type is really important?
Just the first one, for the mother, mostly for her safety, and if she hemorrhaged during pregnancy or delivery, that she would need blood.
And there are times when I guess patients need a lot of blood or a little bit of blood. I mean, has there ever been a scenario where you're like, oh gosh, I need this type of blood, but I don't have enough? Or
yes.
What do you do?
So we have something called a massive transfusion protocol. This happens when there's an obstetrical hemorrhage disaster that happens. Usually if you have time, you try to give matched blood, and the person's blood type, especially if you anticipate the possibility and she's already been crossed and matched. But if not, then you activate the protocol and you give O negative blood. And we've had cases where due to certain conditions of the placenta and the uterus, especially one called the placenta accreta, where the placenta grows into the uterus, where you can't remove the placenta after delivery. We have to remove the entire uterus, and there's so much blood flow that the mothers lose so much blood. They can receive 50 to 100 units of blood. So for all the sort of the general Rh negative women, they receive something called RhoGAM during pregnancy. RhoGAM is an immunoglobulin that blocks the antigens on the red cells. So if you might imagine a fetal cell trying to get into the maternal circulation, if it got in there, the RhoGAM would just attach itself to all the sites, bind all the sites, so the mother can't see the antigens.
That's clever.
And she won't mount a response. So that way, if the fetus happened to be Rh positive, that's correct, then she won't see the positive D antigen.